Hey everyone, this is Jeremy with Teletone, and today's a really exciting day for us because we are releasing the third installment in our drum series. This instrument is called Soulfi. And I wanted to start off by just saying sincerely thank you to all of you. I think I'm one of the luckiest people alive to get to do what I get to do, and it's a pretty fun job. But I will say that making these drum instruments is kind of like the most fun thing that I get to do. It's the most fun to make, and you all have responded so graciously, and it seems that you are, a lot of you are most excited about the drum stuff that we do. So that lines up perfectly with it being one of the most fun things that I get to do. So I want to talk a little bit about what is similar and what's different between Soulfi and the other two drum instruments that we've made this far. And for now, I think that we're going to kind of take electro out of the picture because, you know, electro was an instrument we made where we were sampling all these iconic drum machines. Tympo, we were recording actual acoustic drums, and Soulfi, we are also recording acoustic drum samples. So it's a little bit of a better comparison. They all use a very similar Beatmaker, but I want to talk about how Soulfi and Tympo are different. So whereas Tympo is fat, dead, and dry, we were shooting for like tight, crispy, punchy drums on this one. With Tympo, we went into a studio and we spent a few days sampling a variety of all these vintage drums. And then after we had tracked all of them, we did some analog and digital processing to kind of manipulate the sounds and try and make them really fun to use. With Soulfi, I've spent the better part of a year working on each individual drum sample here at my own place, working on it myself. I had this kind of idea about what if we took, you know, one snare at a time and really like spent some time with it, moving the mics around, but manipulating like the tone and tenor of the drums by a more physical means than like processing afterwards. So this means that, you know, experimenting with tal muting or different kinds of textures on the top of the head, different tunings, different types of heads, putting objects on the snare heads themselves and then hitting it and seeing what that sounds like, recording it, hitting it with different types of sticks. It was a very different approach than the more assembly line type approach that we took in the past for Tympo. This was kind of one drum at a time and seeing what we could do with it, and physically manipulating the sound at the source. A couple more differences between Soulfi and Tympo that I want to hit on. There is basically double the sample content. There's like twice the snare drums, but also just about double the amount of round robins for velocity layers. So that's a pretty big update there. So all of those things contributed to basically the soul sound in Soulfi. The things that are similar, the Beatmaker is going to be the same. You'll make beats the same way you always have. The sound design controls are mostly the same. There's a few tweaks that we made there that I want to go into a little bit later. Okay, one quick note about Soulfi. All of our instruments up until this point were encoded for Kontakt 6.7. Soulfi and everything moving forward will be for 6.8. They did a bunch of bug fixes and stability improvements, so make sure to update or this will not show up in your library. And before we go on to actually looking through the controls and the interface and everything, in case you are new to Teletone instruments, we have kind of a philosophy that we feel like you should be able to load up our instruments and just start playing. Now with Soulfi and all of our drum instruments, there is a lot to look at on the interface, but like getting started is very easy. All of our instruments load up in the left-hand column in Kontakt. They're all encoded for the Kontakt library. You're going to double-click on the Soulfi NKI, and then all you have to do is hit middle C on your keyboard and start performing beats. You can also flip over to the Beatmaker and just hit the play button, start listening to beats, editing beats, switching through beats, switching out the kits. I will teach you how to do all of that, but essentially you can just load up the instrument and start playing immediately. You can always do a deep dive later and figure out what everything else means. So with that being said, you're probably anxious to just hear how this thing sounds. Okay, let's look at the UI now. You're going to notice that there are these little it stands for info, icons all over the front. This will help explain some of the functions here that I'm about to go over. In case you forget, you can click on one of these and save you from having to go back to the manual. All of our drum instruments, we call them performative drum instruments because of this section up here. The pitch wheel and mod wheel are on your keyboard are able to manipulate the sound of these beats in real time. I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly. Here is stretch. So you can hear that as I move it up, it actually contracts and makes the sample shorter. And then as I pull it to the left, it stretches them out. Focus, this is going to shift the focus of the beat from the tops to the kick or bottoms, the lower end information. As you move it to the left, it's going to emphasize the kick. So it's kind of fun. If you want to do like a breakdown in your song in real time, you can use focus to make that happen. Chaos is going to cause kind of a glitching effect. And it does different rhythms, whether you push it up or down. It also behaves a little bit differently when your playhead is static in your DAW than if it's moving. So if you really want to get a feel for like what that is doing, make sure your playhead is moving when you're messing with it. Filter does what you might think. There's a high pass and low pass filter here. And so all of these things can be recorded while you're playing the beat or after. You can just overdub the pitch wheel movements. You can also, with some of these like stretch, you could also turn the button on, pull the pitch wheel down, uncheck it, and then let go, and it will keep things stretched. I'll show you like, so I'll just pull it down, uncheck it, and let go. And so now that's locked in. If you want to get rid of it, turn it back on and kind of flip it one way or the other. Okay, velocity. All of these things correspond to things in the Beatmaker, and I'm going to go into this more in depth later, but there's these little drop downs that correlate with these. If there's nothing drawn into these lanes like spread or tune, then nothing will happen. Something has to be drawn in here for that to do anything. But velocity will work on its own automatically. So you can change the dynamics while you're actually performing the beat, and you'll see the steps move as you do that. Now, we have feel here, which works with the feel lane, and this is completely separate from swing. We have a little bit of swing here happening on 16th notes, but I've also drawn in some stuff to the feel lane, kind of to make, to give a little bit of push and pull, just make the hi-hats feel a little bit more behind the beat. That's something I do quite a bit, is push the hi-hats just a little bit behind the beat, because I just like the way that sounds. If we increase it, it might sound a little goofy, but I'll show you anyway. If we pull it all the way down, it's going to straighten it out quite a bit. There's really interesting things you can do between feel and swing, like trying out maybe like an 8th note swing, but using feel to do something a little bit different with the 16th subdivisions. You can get some really interesting grooves if you do it that way. Spread, as you push these down, they're going to go to the left. If you push them up, they're going to go to the right. And so throughout your sequence, if you want the snare, hi-hats, or anything to be panning back and forth, you can easily do that. And then there's tune. This will take things, well, I'll just show you real quick. I'm going to solo this hi-hat. So that is tune. And that kind of sums up all of our performative functions. You'll have a lot of fun with that. I'm going to switch the beat to this 98 trailer while we look at the sound design functions. Distress is a combination of saturation and compression. Decade is going to do kind of a bunch of things all at once. As you turn it counterclockwise, it's going to make it a little bit more lo-fi, older sounding. It's going to filter out some of the highest and lowest frequencies, also make it a little bit more mono. And then as you turn it clockwise, it's going to make it a little bit more brighter, more stereo, more high fidelity. Under effects, we have saturation, which is being used. And some modulation effects like chorus, flanger, and phaser. As I mentioned earlier, we did some upgrades to the sound design, and that is mainly with the reverb. We've added these 3 spring reverbs that I think add so much to the sound. We made these ourselves, and there are 3 different options. This one loads with the coil option, which is like a shorter reverb. There's also this vintage one. And then there's this spring tank, which is very springy sounding. Along with some slap. Room, if you want it to sound a little more live. And then kind of a mellow dark plate. And we'll set it back where we had it. Then we have swing. On this beat, we are using an 8th note swing, if you're curious what that sounds like. I don't have any 30-second notes loaded up, but there's more rhythmic options here. If you are not sure which one to use, you are probably looking for 16th notes to swing. So I think that's how it's going to load by default anyway, but that's probably what you want if you're not sure. So start there. Then we have these noise options. You will not hear anything until your playhead moves. There are 3 different options. Here's cassette. And then here's room tone, and you can stack these. And then there's vinyl. So those will play while you're recording if you want them on, but they also will not be playing while you have when you're using the play button. Your playhead and your DAW has to be moving for those to make sound. Before we move on, I'm going to point out that there is a lock up here for the sound design. So if you like how you have distress and decade and everything dialed in, but you want to hear a different beat, you can lock that. And it doesn't mean you can't move the dial. It just means that as you're flipping through the beats, as these would normally be switching with the beat, you can just keep that locked in if you don't want it to change. All right, let's listen to some beats. Now, I'm going to do a separate video where I go through like a lot of beats, so maybe I'll just hit like 3 or 4 right now. And I want to mention that the BPM, there's a number in front of the name of the beat. This was 93 Cellar. That's just a recommendation for the BPM. You can play these at any tempo you want, but I'm going to follow my own guidance here. This is 93 Cellar. This one's a little more dry. This one's called Swing Set, 98 Swing Set. So you can hear what I'm talking about when I say that these are very tight, crispy sounding drums. All right, let's look at this beat 79 first. This is actually the first beat that I made with Soulfi. I'm going to change my DAW to 79. Gives you a little bit of a preview of some of the new percussion that we recorded. There's some chimes in there. That is 79 first. Let's just do like one more. And then, like I said, check the Beats video to hear more of these. All right, let's end with 110. It is your birthday. You have to leave us a comment if you know the reference for this. This is kind of shows a little bit of a different side of the instrument. Okay, as we go through the kit selection and talk about the different kits, I want to pull up a beat that doesn't have a lot of percussion going on, because the percussion, you know, if you had a maraca on one and a bongo on another one, the beat's just going to sound kind of goofy. So I'm going to use this one. Let's get it at the right speed, 98. And I'm just going to kind of keep it on one of the patterns that doesn't have the percussion. I want to show you how much you can do by just changing out the kit. This makes a huge difference, and it feels almost like you get like a whole new beat just by switching out the kit. So it's going to keep all the sound design the same, but we're just going to switch out the kits. Some really tight snares in there. Let's hear a few more. Warm Blanket, I like this one. So this one utilizes one of those snares that, as I was talking about in the intro, how we manipulated, we were just trying to get different sounds out of it. You'll see some that say either crack on, like in parentheses next to it, or knock. This is not, it's not something we invented by any means, but I also don't know the technical name for it. It's not a rim shot, and it's not a side stick either. It's like, it's actually hitting this, it's like a side stick snare hit combination, really is what it is. And this utilizes one of those samples. There's another one. So it just kind of has that whack sound to it. We'll just hear a couple more kits. Crispy Tops, that one's really fun. Anyway, we should move on. Well, I forgot to mention, you can also lock the kit. If you get the right sounding kit that you like, and let's say your sound design is how you like it, with the lock on, you can still switch kits, but it will hold it as you navigate through the different beats. One thing to just be aware of, though, is that swing, being part of sound design, is not going to jump around with the beat. So if you were using swing more heavily on the one you're navigating to, like swing set, I know this is using swing pretty heavily. You'll want to adjust that. So that's how you lock the kit, lock the sound design, and navigate through the beats. That ties in nicely with the next section, which is the drum details. With every one of these, you can swap out for a different sound using that window right there. This is also how you put your own kit together. If you wanted to make a new kit yourself, you would select those and then go up to the cog menu and click Save Kit As. And then that's going to store it inside this User Kits folder. So as we look through these different drum tabs, you will notice that there's some red keys down here and some blue keys down here. The blue ones represent the sequences. And then the red ones indicate like where you play during manual mode. And I've been surprised to see how many of you just use manual mode, which is great that you can. I can't. I'm terrible at it. But this is where you would do that, is down here. And you'll notice that the tabs switch to whichever key you're pressing. That makes it really handy for if you're wanting to mix things and adjust them. You can keep one hand kind of triggering the drum that you want while you're making adjustments. So volume, this is going to be how you mix things. Tuning, you can change the tune of each drum. And these samples pitch shift really well. So I know you're probably hesitant, like won't that kind of destroy the sound? But I think this does a really good job of still sounding like a real kick. Panning does what you think. We added this width dial. It's kind of fun. Here's your reverb send for each one. You can compress it without distressing it here. There is a tighten knob, and we did a little adjustment for this that I think you're really going to like. So now tighten only affects the single hit. It doesn't affect the roll. If you turn it up all the way, it's going to affect the roll like a little bit. But basically, this is mostly just for the single hits. And same for the hi-hat. This will tighten the single hits, but it's not going to tighten the open. So you don't have to worry about that. This can almost serve as like a gate to get rid of some of that extra ring if you just want just the attack. Then we have an EQ over here. There is a fixed low frequency and high frequency, and then a sweepable mid frequency. And we added this new feature where you can choose to have either a broad or narrow width on your EQ. You know, typically people say that you want to cut narrowly and boost broadly. It does sound a little bit more natural to boost broadly. If you leave it on the narrow setting, you can kind of hear the spike a little bit, which can be okay. It just makes it a little, like if you turn it up all the way, it can be a little bit harsh. So for me, I use the narrow one for cutting usually, and then I use the broad for boosting. As I mentioned in the intro, there's like twice as many snares as last time. You'll have a lot of fun with that. A whole bunch of new percussion options that I know you'll have a lot of fun with. These are the same options for all three of these menus. There is a reset. So for any of these drum details, if you were kind of messing around with it and you want to reset it, you can just do that with that button. I think the last thing I want to mention is the multi-output. You guys ask about this all the time. It has been a part of it since the beginning, but maybe not everyone knows how to use it. I think we have a tutorial on our YouTube channel showing you how to set up the multi-output stuff. But basically, you click here and you can send any one of these drums out of a different output. One thing that I do a lot on the demos that you guys are going to hear on the website, I'll take the kick and route that out like a separate output. And then the rest of these drums are going to be on the same channel in my DAW. And then I will sidechain them with the kick, where every time the kick hits, it kind of pushes down the snares, hats, and cymbals, which is kind of a really fun effect to use. The last thing I'll mention about the multi-output thing is that when you use it, it's going to bypass all of the EQ and the effects. So you'll be able to use your own effects on that if you want to. Okay, let's move on to the Beatmaker. And you will see that there are these different tabs. These are all different variations on a beat. And so with every beat that I made these, essentially there's usually like 6 different patterns, and then the 7th one is usually a fill. And 8 is usually blank. And well, I copied something into there, but let's clear that measure. So I wanted there to be a reliable place where when you're playing through our beats, you always knew where the fill was. So that's always on this B. The reason 8 is blank is, for one thing, if you want to copy and paste and move the sequence around, it's nice to have a place to paste it into without feeling like you're deleting something that you wanted. So for that reason, but also you may want your song, or like coming back into, if the drums cut out and they're coming back in later, you may not want the whole fill or the whole part of the measure to like just trigger from the beginning. So you can hold down this blank one and it will start the sequence, and then you can legato play into the fill and it'll just kind of pick up mid-measure wherever you are. So that's the reason we did it that way. So you can use the playing the keys, or you can use the play button. You can solo a lane by clicking on it. You can solo multiple lanes by holding Shift. You can mute a lane by, let's see, what is it? Yes, Shift. I knew I'd find it eventually. Shift click will mute a lane. Oh, and I didn't mention you can also solo these lanes or the different drums by double clicking them here too. But here, single click, and then on the home page, double click. You can change the number of steps in your lane right here. This is, if you're writing in 6/8 or 5/4 or anything, this is how you'll want to get there. You'll have to do a little bit of 4th grade level math in order to make it fit right. But this is where you change the steps. If you hold Option and drag, you can change the subdivisions of each step right here, so you don't have to go through and do them individually. The snare has different articulations, and they're right here. These are all single hits, as you can see by the dot. Here's a roll, side stick. The hi-hat is going to have different articulations too. This one you can see is different than this dot. This is a stomp. Half open, tight, and then open. This one was on stomp. The toms have some little rolls. It's not like a long, I say little rolls because it's kind of like little ghost notes. And then I think that's it for the different articulations. You can, let me copy and paste this where I don't worry about messing it up. You can reset a lane with this button right here. You can use the autofill option right here if you wanted to make a pattern like 8th notes, 16th notes. You probably wouldn't do that on the kick normally. You can click these dice for it to give you a random pattern. You can copy and paste different patterns like into different parts of the sequence. If I wanted this to be my kick pattern, as you hover here, you're going to get the copy icon. And then if I wanted to paste that in here, hover again, and here's paste. That will also work with feel. Anytime you want to copy feel, you can also copy that throughout the rest of the measures. So yeah, all of these things you can copy and paste into other parts of the sequence if you want to. One thing I do want to mention about the tune lane before we move on is that it's really useful. Like I said, like the tuning does really, really well. And so if you have, I'll just put a bongo in here on 3. Let's draw in a little pattern here. Now let's go to tune. And you kind of get like 2-for-1 bongos, like when you use the tune lane like this. So any of the tune percussion, you'll definitely want to look at that. If you want to take it even further, you can use spread. Let's pan it the other way. So that's how you can kind of get a little bit more mileage out of these lanes. I think I probably showed you this earlier, but you can copy and paste like this beat into a different measure, copy measure, then you could paste it in here. If at any point you feel like you've just completely messed up your beat and you don't, and you want to get it back to where it started, you can always navigate away and then come back to it. And now as long as you didn't save over it, everything will be the same. You can of course make your own beats by drawing in your steps here. Whenever you have something you like, you're going to use the cog menu here and then do save beat as, or if you've already made a name for it, you can do save beat to save over whatever you were working on. I always recommend putting the BPM in front of the name. If you have just a folder full of names and you don't remember what you were shooting for, you'll probably be glad if you put the BPM in front of the name. So I would just recommend doing that. And then your beats are going to show up under user beats right here. You can favorite any beat you want. I'm going to favorite this one. And now when we go into favorites, it's going to show up there. Here's another one that I already favorited. If you record in manual mode, you can throw it into the Beatmaker pretty easily. I'm going to record something real quick. You'll have to forgive my playing here. So there's one bar, and it's a good idea to at least quantize like the first note. Well, because you need to make sure it's exactly one measure. And in a lot of DAWs, if your note goes over the boundary, it just won't play it. So make sure that it starts exactly on the downbeat, and then all you have to do is drag it into the Beatmaker, and it's going to interpret everything with feel and whatever lag that you played with. And that should sound like this. And a lot of you are using manual mode, so you'll want to know that if you want to do some of the more performative stuff with your beat, you won't be able to do it by playing this MIDI back, so you'll need to drag it into the Beatmaker and use it that way. In the same way that you can drag your manual beat into the Beatmaker, you can also drag it out. Every DAW is going to work a little bit differently. I'm using Cubase because that is like exceptionally friendly for MIDI drag in and out. So here's this icon. You're just going to drag it into your timeline. And now this should have all of that feel information, all of the swing and lag and everything will be there. One note about this, basically, in order for feel to translate in and out of the Beatmaker, we couldn't make it to where it would interpret like, let's say, 64th notes, because especially at a higher tempo, lagging slightly is going to end up being the equivalent of a 64th note or a 32nd note. So it will interpret anything up to 16th notes. And if you're playing 32nd notes for some reason, it's going to round those to 16th notes. But that's the only way that it would work for feel to be able to be interpreted in and out of the Beatmaker. If you want to reset the entire thing where there's no effects, no drums, no changes to the drum details, nothing in the Beatmaker, you can click Initialize, and this will reset it to back to 0 on everything. With any beat, you can do them in halftime. It will load in original time, but you can also do halftime. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about before we go is basically like, how do you use this thing? How do you record with it? And how does it interact with your DAW? I'm going to turn on my click track here, and I'm just going to record a sequence and show you a couple things. All right, so when we look at the MIDI that I recorded here, I am probably early. Wait, no, I'm late. Okay, well, normally keyboard players are like always ahead of the beat, but there is an input quantize, so you don't have to execute this perfectly, which is nice because when your click track is going, I would have had to restart that like 4 times to try and get it where it didn't sound out of sync with the click. So it's going to quantize the input as long as it's not more than, what was it, like a 30-second note off or something. Here it kind of caught up to itself, so it'll quantize this to kind of catch up. And if you're early, it'll wait. And as you can see, I'm playing all these notes legato to make sure that these sequences connect. But that is like essentially how you use this in practice. And then, so after you record this, you could always go back in and record, let me turn the click off. You can go back in and record whatever you want to do with your pitch and mod wheel. And then you can, of course, edit that in your editor window. And I think that is everything for the Beatmaker. I am so incredibly excited about this instrument. I just want to make more and more videos. I don't know how many I'm going to get to. I have a bunch of ideas for stuff that I want to post on our YouTube channel. Also our Instagram. Our Instagram is Teletone Audio, @TeletoneAudio. TeletoneAudio.com is the website. You can check out Soulfi. By the way, we sell beat packs now for these instruments. So there's a Tympo beat pack, there's an electro beat pack. There will certainly be a Soulfi beat pack coming out sometime in the next year. You can also, by the way, so whenever you make a beat yourself using Tympo or electro, it is going to make a file called an NKA. You have permission from us to take those NKAs and sell them as beat packs. You can sell to other Tympo and electro users or Soulfi users as you're making beats. That is completely allowed and even encouraged. But we will have other videos that go into more of a deep dive on the kits, the samples, where we show you a lot more beats. Make sure to check out all of those. They'll be on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Please check out Soulfi. We had a lot of fun with this one. Probably the most fun I've ever had, like working on an instrument. We're really, really excited for you to hear it. Thank you so much for watching.